National Security Agency is expected to protect American citizens from terrorist threats on the homeland and countries around the world. As depicted in the previous scenes, it is believed that the NSA has access to security devices around the country and is constantly watching over us. Or should I say, watching us. The NSA has a reputation of excessive infringement of privacy. A major problem is the security of the nation. The question is whether the NSA is protecting us, but violating our rights in the same instance. Our goal is to develop a resolution that limits the involvement of the NSA protocol on the lives of ordinary citizens. As citizens of the United States, we have the right to defend our rights, or at least know if they are even being violated in the first place. The only responses received by the NSA are that their tactics are classified and part of national security. Ideally, we would have interviewed a real NSA representative. However, we were declined from visiting their headquarters in Maryland. Instead, we decided to perform a mock interview of what we would have expected if the NSA decided to meet with us.
What's your name?
My name is Agent Vic Wayne.
Where do you work?
I work at the National Security Agency, aka NSA.
What do you guys do?
That's classified.
Why?
Because it has to be.
Why does it have to be?
Because.
Do you value Americans' privacy over what your mission is?
No.
How do you collect Americans' data?
It's classified, but I will tell you. We use the cameras and microphones and cameras.
Where is the NSA located?
That's classified.
What's your job?
That's classified.
How do you mine Americans' internet data?
That's also classified.
Damn it! So what isn't classified?
That's classified.
On November 4th, 1952, President Truman first established the National Security Agency with the obvious intent of protecting the United States from both foreign and domestic threats. Throughout the years, different laws have been passed in order to protect the U.S. citizens from having their privacy invaded, but due to the NSA's intense levels of secrecy, these laws are easily bypassed. For example, in 1973, the Supreme Court ruled that warrants are needed in order to conduct domestic intelligence surveillance, and that law has clearly been ignored by the NSA. After the 9/11 attacks, due to the fear of further terrorist attacks that had swept the U.S., the NSA increased their operations and began to collect more domestic information. Also, laws such as the Protect America Act increased the NSA's power and removed the requirement of needing a warrant to perform surveillance. Still, the NSA's infringement of U.S. citizens' rights did not become apparent until whistleblower Edward Snowden, a former NSA worker, came forward with information about the NSA's intelligence collecting methods. According to his reports, the NSA taps into millions of citizens' private text messages, photos, Facebook messages, and even phone calls, regardless of whether or not they are under suspicion of a crime. This led to public outcry against the NSA and a much-needed enlightenment as to what our government agencies are capable of doing without any of the nation knowing. Despite the anger of the U.S. citizens and their clear stance against the activities of the NSA, they have not changed to date. In order to truly protect the privacy of the United States, more transparency in the activities of government is needed.
In the next scenes, we'll hear from some local officials. Specifically, we'll ask a police officer, an Air Force veteran, and Trumbull's first selectman, Tim Herbst, what they think about the NSA.
Before we start, could you tell me, if you know, what the NSA is all about, basic stuff about it?
I don't know a lot about the NSA, but I do know they do do a lot of cybersecurity surveillance.
Yeah, so basically they do a lot of domestic spying and surveillance in order to they say to keep down terrorism and for domestic security. As a police officer, do you believe that NSA spying is beneficial and required to the extent through all the different types of media and internet services? Do you think all that is necessary to ensure domestic security today?
Yes. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Okay. So because a lot of people are concerned with spying on like the private affairs internally?
See, and the funny part is just knowing somewhat what they do. If you have nothing to hide, you don't have to worry about it.
Do you think that there should be limits or ways that the NSA could like make what they're doing like aware for the people? Like some people don't know what they're like per se looking on. Do you think that the NSA should like if they're like spying on you or like monitoring you, should you be able? Would it be okay for you to know?
Yes and no. Yeah, you should know that they exist and what they do, but what are everyday things they do, I don't think the people really need to know, nor should they know, because that tips our hand to keeping the homeland safe.
My name is Timothy Herbst. I am the first selectman of the town of Trumbull.
My name is Master Sergeant Retired Philip E. Morris Jr. Served 20 years in the United States Air Force as a ground radio repairman.
What do you know about the NSA?
Well, I know that the NSA was created more than 60 years ago under President Harry Truman. NSA stands for the National Security Agency, and it is responsible for a whole host of duties as it relates to protecting the American people and providing for security oversight for the nation to defend against threats to the nation.
I'm aware of what they do and their purpose, but I don't really have a lot of knowledge of it, just like what you see in the movies and stuff like that. I never really had to interact with them when I was in the military.
Are you all right with the idea that the NSA is monitoring you and U.S. citizens?
I don't really have a big problem with it. If the purpose is to avoid terrorism, even if they prevent one act of terrorism, I think it's worth it. I think that if you're doing everything legally, you really have nothing to hide, and you have no reason to worry. They're not gonna bother you just for everyday stuff. It would only be if you were doing some kind of a threat to the United States.
It's a very difficult balance to weigh. We want to keep the American people safe. We want to defend the nation against terrorist threats. We want to make sure that we stop these threats before they materialize, and clearly some surveillance techniques have helped prevent terror attacks from happening after September 11th. But also, the balance is that constitutionally, we are guaranteeing certain rights to privacy. So it is a very difficult balancing act. You obviously want to protect against threats, keep people safe. You want to honor their constitutional right to privacy. So there have been incidents that have arisen since the adoption of the Patriot Act, which has given the NSA enhanced power with respect to monitoring and surveillance. And some of those things that have been reported in the media, some of those things I think have gone a little too far. But as a whole, I think that it is necessary that the NSA carry out their duties within the confines of the Constitution to conduct any type of surveillance or monitoring that is in the national security interest of the country in protecting the American people.
What do you think is a good resolution to settle conflict between the NSA and U.S. citizens?
Well, we have three branches of government in our federal system: the executive branch, the legislative branch, judicial branch. The NSA was a creature of legislative action back in 1952, but it is part of now the executive branch. If there is a constitutional question or a constitutional dispute as to the powers of the NSA and whether they are within the confines of the Constitution and federal law or have exceeded the confines of the Constitution or federal law, that is what the judicial branch is for.
I think the best thing to do to resolve this would be education. Let the public know what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Do you believe this is a valid defense against terrorism?
Yes, I do believe it's a valid defense against terrorism. When I was stationed up in upstate Pennsylvania, there was actually an instance where this was used to detect terrorism. I don't know if you recall, But there was an attack planned on Fort Dix, and the people actually trained up in the area where we lived. So, and I'm pretty sure the NSA had a lot to do with that being discovered.
My opinion is that a lot has happened since 2001. 2015 is a lot different from 2001. 2001, I was a senior in college. And now I'm in my third term as the first selectman of the town of Trumbull. So a lot's happened during that time. And what's going to happen is that the role of the NSA and what is deemed to be acceptable and not acceptable, or constitutional or not constitutional, is going to evolve as the times change.
Do you believe this is a valid defense against terrorism?
Yes and no. That's kind of, if they didn't do it and something happened, where were you? Why weren't you protecting us? But if they did do it, then it's like, oh, you're invading our privacy. So it's, you can't do anything about it either way. The safest option is for that to actually happen, though, to listen on the phone calls, those type of things.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? Really think about it. If a nuke was on its way, then it's like, okay, where's our government? Why are we, what's going on? Obama. You know what I'm saying? That's my thing, That's
they claim to have stopped 52 terrorist attacks around the world.
That I believe.
But they have no proof. When the media asked for proof, they didn't have any to give.
Oh, yeah. Well, who would sit there and say, okay, here's all our secrets?
That's, okay.
Nothing you can do about that, Maybe it might have been 10. Maybe it might have been, you never know. Could have been 614, All
right. As you can see, even those who we would expect to be knowledgeable on the subject have no idea the true actions of the NSA. The police officer and Air Force Master Sergeant know basically nothing, and the First Selectman Tim Herbst knew lots of the history but not much on current surveillance. Even though most, if not all of us, are questioning the NSA, some people, such as Officer Leo and Sergeant Morris, still feel safe with their presence and believe it is worth sacrificing our rights. While this view is certainly reasonable and respectable, others feel threatened, and thus this problem must be addressed. How could an agency whose purpose is to defend us against threats become a threat themselves? So what do? How do we resolve conflict between National Security Agency and U.S. citizens? The answer to this lies in the hands of the people, and those who lead the people. As stated by Tim Herbst, the judicial branch is expected to interpret our laws and rights. This issue must be brought to their attention so they can begin judging the fate of the NSA. If their actions are found unjustified, those responsible shall suffer the consequences, and NSA powers will be limited. If they are found not guilty of violating our rights and abusing their influence, then U.S. citizens shall be informed of the decision and accept protection provided by the NSA. If conflict persists after this point, then U.S. citizens should have the power to make the change we desire if it's for the better of our country. The truth of the matter is, we can never make everyone happy. This project was created based on the perspectives of those who oppose the NSA. However, there are citizens who think what they are doing is completely necessary. No matter what happens, someone will be upset. At least with the solutions mentioned previously, we can be one step closer to ending the discussion. And with that said, thank you for watching.
Ladies and gentlemen all around the world, boys and girls, catch the squirrel. If you up on the dance floor, I say up on the dance floor, I need